In the next 12 to 15 minutes, I'll present some recent work on the influence of hydrothermal alteration on volcanic slopes. So very quickly, why would we do this, or why are we interested in this? Volcanoes are inherently unstable. They're built from successive deposits that are haphazardly constructed in both time and space. And these structures are very weak, they're very heterogeneous, and they're very prone to collapse. And so mass wasting in a variety of forms is very commonplace. At a volcano, that can trigger secondary volcanic hazards as well. So it's really, the stability of volcanic structure is really important for a variety of different hazards. Collapses obviously have resulted in fatalities, and also a massive loss of infrastructure, huge problems with like decimation of buildings and other infrastructure such as that. So one factor considered to influence the stability of these structures, these domes, these flanks, is hydrothermal alteration, and that's one of the reasons we think that is because when we find the debris avalanche deposit, when you dig around in there, you see that there's a lot of altered materials in there. So here we're going to look at two modeling studies which focus on different aspects of how alteration can influence a volcanic edifice stability. So what does alteration do to a rock? Very broadly, you can think of it in two end members that you can have. Alteration can dissolve rock, which will increase the porosity. And what we know about porosity and rock strength, this would suggest that it would decrease the rock strength, and you can see how that would influence the stability of a volcano, or how it would negatively impact the stability of a volcano. The other way alteration can affect volcanic rock is you can have precipitation of secondary minerals inside the pore space within the rock. This will decrease the porosity and potentially increase the strength. And so maybe, I don't want to give anything away, maybe this could help the volcano in some way. But spoiler alert, it does not. So we're going to go to two places, very different parts of the world, to look at these two end member scenarios and what does it do. So for dissolution type alteration, that's the weakening here. We're going to go to La Soufrière de Guadeloupe, and for precipitation type alteration, that's this side here, we're going to go to Chaos Crags in California. So case study one, La Soufrière de Guadeloupe. It's a typical hazardous andesitic stratovolcano. What we did is we went to the volcano, we collected a bunch of materials which are variably altered, took them back to the lab. We did uniaxial and triaxial deformation experiments, and these were all tailored towards providing values for large-scale stability models. And so we did the experiments in order to populate the models with what we considered realistic values for the materials comprising the edifice. Quick results here. So this is the La Soufrière samples. We have compressive strength as a function of the alteration. If you ignore these two samples down here, and there's good reasons to do that, you can kind of see that the strength decreases as a function of increasing alteration. So does the Young modulus, and so does the cohesion. So we have altered rocks from La Soufrière are getting weaker as they are becoming altered. Why is that the case? Well, if we look at some SEM pictures, we can see that the alteration has eaten away at the rock, dissolved the materials, it has increased the porosity, and it has resulted in weakening, reduction in Young's modulus, reduction in cohesion. So the idea of doing these experiments was to populate a model. So here's the model setup, and we used some electrical resistivity tomography to create a structure of the volcano. So this is from one of our previous publications, and then we made a 2D section of the volcano where we assigned different intensities of alteration based on the data that we had from the electric. We used an open source software, LaMem, to do the modeling, and you can find out about that in the publications. I don't have time to talk about it just now. Yeah, and rock data was selected from the experiments to populate the zones in the volcano so we can run our simulation. Here are the results of the simulation. So what we have is we have 4 different simulations that we ran. We ran 2 simulations for homogeneous volcanoes, where we have the whole volcano is slightly altered or moderately altered. In the 3rd scenario, we have this banana-shaped alteration zone, which is the present-day structure as informed by the electric. And the final scenario is if a future scenario where we expand the alteration zone, covering the whole of the southern flank of the volcano here. On this side, we have the model results, where inside the volcano, the different colors represent velocity, strain rate. Different colors represent the strain rate. So you can see for the 2 homogeneously altered samples, volcanoes, we don't really have much in the way of movement in the flank. In the present day volcano, we see some movement, and when we increase the alteration to a future scenario, we see that there's a lot of deformation indicated by these colors here inside the flank. So what we can say with these models is that as we increase the alteration in the volcano, we are increasing the rate at which the volcano is deforming, and so we are increasing the hazard. The second scenario is this precipitation type scenario, and for this we're going to go to Chaos Crags in America. Again, we went to the volcano, we collected rocks, variably altered, we performed experiments to make to have values for our models. This time we also measured the permeability of these materials. So this is the picture of the volcano where the various samples were collected. So they were taken back to lab, we called samples, we did some experiments. Here are the experiments. So this time I plotted Young's modulus as a function of the porosity, strength as a function of the porosity, and over here is permeability as a function of the porosity. So what you can see for the different samples, a lot of them have the same strength and the same Young's modulus, apart from these black triangles here, which are a lot stiffer and a lot stronger. And so these are the most altered ones. So as I said before, this precipitation alteration has increased the strength and stiffness of the materials, which is quite cool. We might think that that might help the volcano because you're having an increase in strength and that might stabilize things. However, on the graph on the right, what we see as well is that these samples are also associated with very, very low permeabilities. Some 3-4 orders of magnitude lower. And if you understand permeability and fluid pressures and distribution of fluids, then having a really low permeability is not a good idea in your volcano because it can create pore pressures which can influence the stability as well. So the alteration here has increased the strength but decreased the permeability by a lot. Why has it done that? Well, we can see here SEM pictures where we have cracks and pores which are filled with these alteration minerals. It's reducing the porosity. It's cutting off fluid flow pathways. It's killing the permeability. So it's very different to the alteration we saw at La Soufrière, or the type of alteration we saw at La Soufrière. So maybe this could stabilize the volcano. However, this huge reduction in permeability could create pressurization, pore pressurization zones, which could influence or negatively influence the stability of the volcano. So we can test this hypothesis using the same model as we did before, the model called La MEM. Again, we're using the experiments to inform the model. This time we don't have any electric data to create a 2D cross-section of the volcano. So we're going to use this very generic, a child's drawing of a volcano, essentially, where the yellow zone is the alteration zone and the rest of the non-altered material is this gray zone here. So what we did to represent the pore pressure zone, or to encapsulate this idea of being a low permeability, is we increase this pore pressure coefficient inside the alteration zone. So this alteration zone is stronger, which might be good, but it also has a higher pore fluid pressure because of the lower permeability. So let's have a look what that does. It does not do anything good for the volcano. So these are the 4 different scenarios here. We have no alteration zone here. We have a little bit of an alteration zone. We have a gradually increasing the size of the alteration zone as we go down in these models here. Here we have displacement. High displacements are yellow, so those are dangerously deforming zones, and low displacement is blue, so the blue is good, yellow is bad. The arrows also indicate the direction and magnitude of the flank movement. So what we see is as we increase the size of this, or as the alteration zone appears and we increase the size of it, then the volcano is deforming a lot, and it's deforming by the downward movement of the volcano and the outward spreading of the volcano. So here, even though that yellow zone is stronger, it has a higher pore pressure, and this is like causing the instability. It's very classic in terms of what's described as volcanic spreading, which is understood to initiate very large collapses. So although the stability, although it looks like it's sagging and spreading, actually this is usually how these larger collapses are initiated at these volcanic sites. So it's pretty dangerous. So as a summary, so we have dissolution type alteration is a really broad brush term. It just means that something changed. In volcanic rocks, we definitely have dissolution type alteration, where the acidic fluids dissolve the materials and dissolve the minerals and increase porosity. We also have a precipitation type alteration, where we get fluids into the rock that precipitate minerals inside. And we explored how those two end members can influence the stability of a volcano. In both instances, we saw that it's bad news for a volcano. Alteration is pretty, like, it's not a good idea, or it's not good news, and that these different types of alteration promote instability through different mechanisms, one by weakening the material and one by creating a high pore pressure zone. So as a result, hydrothermal alteration should be monitored very carefully worldwide. But not only, we need to understand the distribution of the different types of alteration in the volcano. So we need to know roughly where we have dissolution type alteration, where we have precipitation type alteration. Presumably these things are both happening in the volcano. Like when you dissolve something, it has to go somewhere. And the distribution of these things, which we don't have much of a handle on, must depend on factors such as pressure, temperature, pH, what's happening with the fluids. As the temperature of fluids decrease, then it's more likely to precipitate minerals from the solution. And so the next job is trying to understand how that works exactly. Absolutely shameless plug. We published both of these papers last year, one in JGR and one in geology. So check them out, because I've spoken about them very, very quickly here. If any of this interests you, check them out. And I think that I'm probably over time still, but thanks for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or later on if that is what we're doing. Thanks very much.